The dust hung in the air like powdered gold, caught in the last rays of Thursday's light slanting through the workshop windows. I moved the sandpaper in long, even strokes across the walnut desk surface, feeling the wood grow warmer under my palm. 220 grit. The grain was opening up beautifully, revealing the cathedral pattern I'd spent 3 days coaxing out of rough lumber. My shoulders burned. I'd been at this since 6 that morning, 15 hours of standing, shaping, breathing in fine particles that settled in my hair and the creases of my work clothes. The finishing studio smelled of linseed oil and fresh shavings, a smell that used to mean possibility. Now it just meant another 16-hour day, another piece I'd sell for half what it was worth because the mortgage was due and the phantom debt never stopped growing. The phantom debt, that's what I called it in my head, this amorphous obligation that had somehow become my inheritance. 6 years of payments on my father's business losses. 6 years since he'd clutched his chest in our kitchen and told me the doctors had found irregularities, that stress would kill him, that the company accounts were bleeding red. I'd been 21, still young enough to believe that family meant something mutual, something reciprocal. I'd been wrong. I set down the sandpaper and flexed my fingers. The calluses had calluses now. My hands looked older than my 31 years. The skin dried and cracked despite the lotion I rubbed in every night. I reached for my water bottle, took a long pull, and let my eyes rest on the white oak table in the center of the studio. That piece still hurt to look at. I'd built it 3 months ago during a week when sleep had felt impossible, when the numbers in my bank account kept rearranging themselves into configurations that meant eviction. The table had been therapy, each mortise and tenon joint cut with the kind of precision that required complete mental silence. I'd carved my heat brand into the side apron with shaking hands, V. Dawson in clean capitals, and then rubbed 20 coats of oil into the surface until it glowed like amber. It was the best work I'd ever done. It was also still sitting here, unsold, because I couldn't bring myself to let it go. My phone buzzed on the workbench. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I considered not answering. I was tired enough that the idea of simply letting it ring felt like rebellion. But habit was a deep groove, worn smooth by years of conditioning, and I swiped to accept before I could talk myself out of it. Hi, Mom. Verity. Her voice had that particular airless quality it took on when she was about to deliver bad news disguised as concern. I'm glad I caught you. I wanted to talk before things get hectic this weekend. Okay. I leaned against the workbench, already bracing. It's about the engagement party on Saturday. Your father and I have been discussing it, and we think it would be best if you didn't attend. The words landed with the weight of a mallet strike. My free hand found the edge of the bench, gripping. You're uninviting me. Don't make it sound so dramatic. It's just Bella's been under so much stress with the wedding planning, and you know how she gets when she's anxious. We thought it would be easier for everyone if you sat this one out. Easier for everyone. The phrase was familiar, one of my mother's favorites. It never meant everyone. It meant Bella. I already bought a gift, I said, hating how thin my voice sounded. That's sweet, honey, but it's really not necessary. You know we understand your situation. The business has been struggling, and we don't expect you to. The business is fine. The lie came automatically, defensive. Verity. Now her tone shifted, taking on that syrupy patience that made me feel like I was 13 again. Your father's heart condition means he can't take on stress. You know that. If there's tension at the party, if you and Bella get into one of your, discussions, it could be dangerous for him. There it was, the heart condition, the ultimate trump card, played whenever I showed signs of resistance. I closed my eyes, saw my father 6 years ago, pale-faced at the kitchen table, clutching his chest while my mother called 911. Saw the hospital bills that had followed, the specialist appointments, the medications. Except I'd never actually seen any of those bills, never been to a single appointment. My parents had handled everything privately, had simply presented me with the final tally, $60,000 in medical debt, combined with the company's sudden financial collapse. And I, dutiful and terrified of losing the only family I had said yes to all of it. I've been making payments for 6 years, I said quietly. I've never missed one. And we're grateful, sweetheart. But this weekend isn't about money. It's about Bella's happiness. You understand that, don't you? I understood a lot of things. I understood that my sister had gotten the childhood bedroom with the bay window while I'd gotten the converted garage. I understood that Bella's college tuition had been paid in full while I'd been told there simply wasn't enough for both of us. I understood that when I'd been 23 and working 16-hour days to build my portfolio, to create the kind of furniture that might earn me a reputation, I'd been told I was selfish for prioritizing my hobby over family obligations. I understand, I said. Wonderful. I knew you would. We'll see you soon, okay? Maybe Sunday for brunch. The call ended. I stood in the golden dust light, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. Then I walked to my desk, pulled open the bottom drawer, and took out the envelope I'd sealed 2 days ago. Inside was a check for $5,000, half of what I'd been paid for a commissioned dining set, money I desperately needed for next month's rent. The card attached read, "Congratulations, Bella and Julian. Wishing you every happiness." I looked at it for a long moment, then I tore the check in half, then quarters, then kept tearing until the pieces were too small to rip further. The scraps fell onto my workbench like snow. I swept them into the trash bin with the side of my hand and went back to sanding. The walnut desk still needed work, and work was all I had left. The day before the engagement, Friday morning arrived with fog so thick that I could barely see across the workshop parking lot. I'd been up since 5, running inventory, and trying not to think about the calendar. 30 days until eviction if I didn't make next month's rent. 30 days to pull together $3,000, which might as well have been $3 million. I was reorganizing my chisel rack when I heard the car doors slam outside. Multiple doors. My stomach dropped. I walked to the front window and looked out through the condensation. A sleek Audi sedan sat in my gravel lot, looking as out of place as a show horse in a scrapyard. 4 people were climbing out, my mother in cream linen, my father in a sport coat, Bella in something white and flowing, and a tall man in dark jeans and a charcoal Henley. Julian, the fiancé I'd never met. My first thought was to lock the door and pretend I wasn't here. My second was that they'd already seen my truck. I watched them approach, watched my mother's practiced smile, my father's careful gait, Bella's hand possessively wrapped around Julian's arm. I opened the door before they could knock. Surprise. My mother's voice was crystalline, performative. "We wanted Julian to see where you work. He's very interested in craftsmanship." Julian stepped forward, extending his hand. "Verity, I've heard a lot about you." I doubted that was true. But his handshake was firm, his eye contact direct. He was handsome in an understated way, sharp jawline, dark hair pushed back from his forehead, eyes that looked gray in the morning light. There was an easiness to him that suggested money, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. "Nice to meet you," I said. I stepped back, allowing them entry into the finishing studio. Julian's attention went immediately to the space. His gaze traveled across the workbenches, the hanging tools, the half-finished pieces in various stages of completion. I watched him take in the Japanese pull saw mounted on the wall, the antique hand planes lined up by size, the white oak table in the center of the room. "This is incredible," he said, and something in his voice suggested he actually meant it. "Where did you train?" "Here." The word came out flat. "I'm self-taught." "Really?" Julian moved toward the oak table, his expression shifting into something like wonder. He crouched down to examine the joinery, running his fingers along the edge where the apron met the legs. "These are hand-cut dovetails." "Yes. Most people use a jig for dovetails this size. The precision required to do this by hand." He stood, looking at me with new attention. "How long have you been woodworking?" "Since I was 15. My mother cut in, voice bright and brittle. "Verity's always been good with her hands, very practical skills." The dismissal in that word practical made my jaw tighten. Bella was shifting her weight, looking uncomfortable. My father stood near the door, arms crossed, watching the interaction like a man watching a fuse burn toward dynamite. "We should let her get back to work," my father said. "I'm sure she's busy." But Julian was still looking around, his interest apparently genuine. "Do you mind if I look at the milling bay? I've been wanting to set up a shop myself, and I'd love to see your equipment set up." "Julian, honey, we really should," Bella started. "It's fine," I said, surprising myself. Something about my father's eagerness to leave made me want to prolong this. "It's through that door." I led him toward Zone B, aware of my family trailing behind like reluctant shadows. The moment I opened the door to the milling bay, The smell of raw lumber rolled out cedar, pine, oak, all mixing into the thick perfume of possibility. Julian stepped in, and I watched his expression shift into something close to reverence. The space was organized chaos. A table saw with an extended outfeed, a planer, a jointer, racks of lumber sorted by species and grade. The dust collector sat in the corner like a sleeping beast, its collection barrel half full of shavings. "Can I see how you've set up your dust collection?" Julian asked. I moved to the machine, flipped the switch. The collector roared to life, a grinding mechanical howl that swallowed all other sound. Julian leaned in to examine the hose connections, nodding to himself. Behind me, I felt my family's presence like a weather front. I turned and found Bella stepping close, too close, her face arranged into an expression of desperate sweetness. Bella's mouth was moving. The words were lost under the machine noise, but I could read lips well enough. "We need to talk." I led Bella back into the finishing studio, leaving Julian to examine the lumber racks in the milling bay. The dust collector's roar followed us through the doorway, muffling the world into a lower register of mechanical thunder. My parents followed us into Zone A. My mother immediately moved to the window, putting space between herself and whatever was about to happen. My father positioned himself near the door, blocking the exit. Military positioning? I thought distantly. They'd practiced this. Bella grabbed my wrist. Her fingernails, perfectly manicured in pale pink, dug into the skin. "I need a favor," Bella said. The dust collector noise forced her to half shout. "For the engagement party tomorrow night." "Tomorrow's Saturday," I said stupidly. "Yes, tomorrow. Saturday night." Bella's grip tightened. "I need a cedar archway. 7 feet tall, distressed finish, something rustic elegant. The rental company canceled on us yesterday, and I'm desperate." I stared at my sister. "An archway. By tomorrow morning. You build furniture all the time." "Bella, that's 30 hours of work minimum, maybe more if you want it to look decent." "Then you'd better start now." Bella's voice had gone sharp, the sweetness evaporating. "Unless you want everyone at my engagement party to know why you couldn't make it." The threat landed like a slap. I yanked my wrist free. "What's that supposed to mean?" My father stepped forward. "It means we've supported you for 6 years while you've played carpenter. The least you can do is help your sister on the most important weekend of her life." The words, "played carpenter," hit like a gut punch. I looked at my father, at his flushed face, his clenched fists, his complete lack of the frailty he'd claimed for years. "Supported me?" The laugh that came out of me was serrated. "I've been paying your debt since I was 21. I've given you everything." "You've given us what you owe us," my father snapped, stepping closer. His face was red now, veins standing out on his neck. "After everything we sacrificed to raise you, to feed you, to keep a roof over your head, you think you can just—" "Your heart seems strong enough to scream at me." The words came out louder than I'd intended, and in that exact moment, the dust collector in the milling bay cycled down. The machine's roar died into silence, and my shout echoed through both rooms like a gunshot. Footsteps. Julian appeared in the doorway between zones, a Japanese chisel in his hand. He was holding it the way someone holds a chisel when they understand tools, fingers wrapped around the handle, thumb resting on the brass ferrule. His eyes moved from me to my parents to Bella and back again. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. The silence stretched. My mother was the first to recover, arranging her face into a smile. "Just family discussion. You know how it is." Julian's gaze landed on the chisel in his hand, then moved to the wall where its matching set hung. "This is a Tasai Kurochi, professional-grade Japanese steel. Most hobbyists don't invest in tools like this." "I'm not a hobbyist," I said. "No." Julian set the chisel down on the workbench with deliberate care. "I don't think you are." He turned to Bella. "Your sister trained at RISD, didn't she?" The question landed like a depth charge. I felt the air compress. "No," Bella said quickly. "She didn't go to college. She's always worked here." "I was invited to RISD," I interrupted. The words came up from somewhere deep, somewhere I'd buried 8 years ago. 8 years ago. Full scholarship to their furniture design program. Julian's expression shifted, not confusion, but recognition. Something clicking into place. "Dawson," he said slowly. "Wait. Dawson." I watched him put it together, watched the moment of realization hit. Professor Evans told me about a student, Julian continued, his voice taking on a strange quality. A student named Dawson who rejected a full-ride scholarship to RISD's furniture program. He said it was one of the biggest regrets of his career, letting that talent slip away. He kept their portfolio for years. The room had gone completely still. I felt my mother's panic like electricity in the air. That was 8 years ago, Julian said, looking at me. You would have been 23, I finished. My mother moved forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. Julian, it's complicated. Verity had severe anxiety back then. She begged us to help her decline the acceptance. We even wrote the letter for her because she was too overwhelmed to do it herself. That's not true, I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, like I was listening to someone else speak. I never received an acceptance package. Honey, you're misremembering. I never got the letter, Mom. I checked the mail every single day that spring. I never saw anything from RISD. Julian's face had gone hard. He looked at my parents with the kind of expression that probably worked well in boardrooms. If she didn't write or sign that rejection letter, and you forged her signature on official correspondence with a federal institution, he let the sentence hang. That's mail fraud. And forgery. Federal crimes. My father's face had gone from red to white. Now wait just a minute. Did she sign the letter? Julian asked. Simple question. The silence was answer enough. My hands had started shaking. I pressed them flat against the workbench, feeling the wood grain under my palms, grounding myself in something solid. 8 years. 8 years of believing I hadn't been good enough, that RISD had looked at my portfolio and found it wanting. 8 years of the phantom debt. We did what we thought was best, my mother said, but the conviction had drained from her voice. Verity was so young, and the program was so far away. We couldn't afford to lose her. Couldn't afford, I repeated. The words tasted like rust. You couldn't afford to lose my income. My father stepped forward, attempting to regain control. That's not fair. You have no idea what we were going through financially. The heart condition, I said flatly. The one that required $60,000 in treatment. When exactly was that diagnosed, Dad? I watched him hesitate, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. 6 years ago. My mother supplied. You know that. We've been over this. What hospital? I asked. What cardiologist? Another hesitation. Too long. Julian was watching this unfold with the attention of someone who'd grown up learning to read boardroom dynamics. You know, he said conversationally, it's interesting. When someone actually has a serious heart condition, they usually mention their doctor's name, the medications, the dietary restrictions. He looked at my father. What medication are you on? My father's jaw worked. That's private medical information. It's also very easy to verify. Julian pulled out his phone. My father's a cardiac surgeon at Mass General. I could have him pull records with your consent. Or without it, if there's reasonable suspicion of fraud. The word fraud seemed to suck the oxygen out of the room. I was remembering things now, pieces clicking together with the awful precision of a tightening mortise joint. My father's heart condition had appeared 2 years after the RISD letter would have arrived. 2 years of me working 16-hour days, building my portfolio, selling pieces at craft fairs, saving every dollar, and then suddenly, there was a crisis. Suddenly I was needed. The business losses, I said slowly. The ones I've been paying off for 6 years. What really happened to the company? My mother's face had arranged itself into a mask of wounded dignity. Your father made some bad investments. It wasn't his fault the market crashed. The market crashed in 2008, Julian said mildly. That was 17 years ago. What investments are we talking about? Bella finally spoke, her voice thin. Can we please just stop this? Julian, we should go. What kind of investments, Dad? I pressed. I thought of the ledger in my desk drawer, the one I'd started keeping 3 years ago when the numbers had stopped making sense. Because I've been paying business debts for 6 years, and I've never once seen paperwork, no loan documents, no creditor information. My father's face had gone red again. You think you're so smart, don't you? Think you're going to what, audit me? I'm your father. Then act like it. The shout came from somewhere primal. Tell me the truth. For once in my life, tell me the actual truth." The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear my own heartbeat, could hear the tick of the wall clock, could hear traffic on the distant highway. My mother broke first. "It was gambling," she said quietly. "Your father had some debts. Not 60,000, it was less. But we needed help. And you were making money. And we thought. You thought you'd steal 8 years of my life." My voice had gone flat. "You forged a rejection letter from my dream school. You invented a medical emergency. You've taken almost $80,000 from me over 6 years for business losses that were actually gambling debts." I looked at my father. "How much did you actually owe?" "That's not." "How much?" "20,000, he muttered. "But with interest. I've paid you almost 4 times that." I felt something crystallizing inside my chest, something cold and clear and absolutely certain. "I've been your personal ATM since I was 21 years old. You stole my education. You stole my 20s. You stole my future." Julian was looking at my parents with an expression of pure disgust. "This is beyond family dysfunction. This is criminal fraud. Tax fraud, if you claimed those gambling debts as business losses." He turned to Bella. "Did you know about any of this?" Bella's silence was answer enough. Her face had gone pale, but there was something in her eyes, not surprise. Knowledge. Complicity. "You knew," I said softly. "About Rizd. You knew I'd been accepted." "I didn't, it wasn't my place to." Bella's words tumbled over each other. "You were always so intense about your woodworking, and Mom said you'd be better off staying close to home. And I thought, you thought you'd use my work to make yourself look good." I moved toward the white oak table. "Like you did 3 months ago." Julian's brow furrowed. "What?" I gestured to the table. "This piece. I built it in March. Posted a photo on my barely used Instagram account because a client asked to see my work." I looked at Bella. "And then what happened?" Bella had gone very still. "Then my sister," I continued, "took that photo, cropped out the background, and posted it on her own Instagram. Claimed she'd built it herself. Got 4,000 likes, and a dozen commission requests." "That's not, I never said I built it," Bella stammered. "You said my new piece, and so proud of this build." My voice was surgical. "I have screenshots." Julian's phone was already out. "What's your Instagram handle?" "Don't," Bella said sharply. "Julian, please don't." But he was already scrolling. I watched him find the post, watched his thumb stop moving, watched him zoom in on the photo. Then he walked to the oak table and crouched down, examining the side apron. His finger traced over the heat brand burned into the wood. "V. Dawson. It's the same table," he said quietly. "Same grain pattern. Same brand mark visible in the photo if you zoom in." He looked up at Bella. "You claimed credit for your sister's work. That's intellectual property theft." "It was just a photo," Bella tried. "It was copyright infringement and fraud." Julian stood. "You gained social capital and potentially income opportunities by lying about creating this piece. That's actionable." Bella's face had gone from pale to splotchy red. "You're being ridiculous. It was just Instagram." "Just Instagram," I repeated. I felt something shifting in my chest. 8 years of compression finally finding a release valve. "You stole my work, my reputation, and my potential clients. How many commission requests did you get from that post?" "I didn't accept any of them." "How many, Bella?" 15, Bella whispered. 15 potential clients. 15 opportunities that could have changed everything, could have paid rent, could have bought supplies, could have built the financial security I'd been drowning without for years. Julian was still examining the table, his jaw tight. "This is museum-quality work. The joinery alone." He stopped, straightened. "You know what? I'm done." He turned to Bella. "I need to think about some things." Panic flashed across Bella's face. "Julian, no, please, this is just its family drama. It doesn't have anything to do with us." "You lied about building this table. What else have you lied about?" "Nothing, I swear." But Bella's mother was moving now, her composure cracking. "This is your fault," she hissed at me. "You couldn't just let things be. You had to ruin everything." "I ruined everything?" I felt the words come up from somewhere volcanic. "You forged documents. You stole $80,000. You destroyed my future. And you want to blame me? My father stepped forward, and for a moment I thought he might actually hit me. His hand was raised, face contorted, and I found myself stepping back instinctively. Julian moved between us so fast it seemed like teleportation. Touch her and I'll have you arrested. This is my property. Actually, I said, my voice suddenly calm. It's not. I walked to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the leather-bound ledger I'd been keeping for 3 years. The one I'd started when the numbers had stopped making sense, when I'd begun documenting everything. 3 years ago, I said, opening the ledger, I started tracking every payment I made to you, every business debt installment, every emergency check. I turned pages, revealing neat columns of dates, amounts, and purposes. I also started keeping copies of every receipt, every bank statement, every text message where you demanded money. My mother had gone very still. What are you doing? I'm showing you what due diligence looks like. I found the page I wanted. Last year, I hired a forensic accountant. Cost me $2,000 I couldn't afford, but I needed to know if I was crazy. Turns out I wasn't. I turned the ledger toward Julian. My father claimed business losses on his taxes for 6 consecutive years, losses that I was helping him recover from, but he never actually had a business failure. He reported the gambling debts as business losses, which is tax fraud, and the money I gave him? He never reported that as income, more tax fraud. Julian took the ledger, his expression hardening as he scanned the pages. These are federal crimes, multiple counts. I know. I pulled out another document, this one in a plastic sleeve. I also had a real estate attorney look into something that's been bothering me. The workshop this building was purchased by my grandfather 30 years ago. When he died 15 years ago, he left it to me in his will. I was 16. My parents had gone completely silent. But I never saw that will. I continued. My parents told me Grandpa had left everything to them, and I believed it. Why wouldn't I? I was a kid. I held up the document. This is the title deed. My name has been on it for 15 years, and the property taxes I've been paying on this building, the ones you told me were for business expenses, those were my property taxes, on my building. My mother's hands were shaking. You can't? I can. I felt the years of exhaustion crystallizing into something diamond hard. I own this building. I own the business. And the house you're living in? The one with the mortgage I've been paying half of for 6 years? I called the bank. You're 3 months behind on payments. You're in default. You had no right, my father started. I had every right. I've been paying your mortgage. I closed the ledger. So here's what's going to happen. The house goes on the market tomorrow. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. The workshop stays with me. And every dollar you've taken from me over the past 6 years gets reported to the IRS as unreported income. Good luck explaining that. My father lunged. Not at me at the table, or more specifically, at the can of paint thinner sitting on the edge of the workbench, left there from yesterday's finishing work. But Bella was faster. She grabbed the can, her face twisted with desperation, and swung it toward the white oak table toward the side apron, where the V. Dawson brand marked my work. If I can't have it, Bella started. I moved without thinking. I threw myself between my sister and the table, arms out, and felt the chemical splash across my chest. The paint thinner soaked through my flannel shirt instantly, the harsh solvent smell overwhelming, and then the burning started. Shit. I ripped the flannel off, buttons scattering across the floor, and hurled the soaked shirt into the metal waste bin. I stood there in my undershirt, breathing hard, feeling the chemical evaporating off my skin. The burn was superficial. I'd caught it fast enough, but my hands were shaking with adrenaline. Julian had grabbed Bella's wrist, forcing her to drop the paint thinner can. It hit the concrete floor with a clang, chemical pooling. That's assault, he said quietly, an attempted destruction of evidence. He was holding Bella and stepped back, looking at her like he'd never seen her before. Then he twisted the engagement ring off her finger, a simple platinum band, and set it on the workbench next to the ledger. She tried to resist, but he was stronger. Keep it, he told me. Collateral for the damages. Have your lawyer send me the full accounting. Then he walked toward the bay door and out into the morning fog. For a moment, nobody moved. I stood in my undershirt, breathing hard, smelling of paint thinner. Bella stared at the door where Julian had disappeared. My parents looked at each other, and I saw the first real fear cross their faces. "Get out," I said. "Get out of my workshop and don't come back." My mother opened her mouth, closed it. Then she grabbed her purse and walked out. My father followed, silent for once. Bella lingered for a moment, something complicated crossing her face. Regret, maybe. Or just the realization that she'd lost something she couldn't get back. Then she turned and left too. I stood alone in the finishing studio, surrounded by sawdust and half-built dreams, and the white oak table that had somehow become evidence in the trial of my own life. I looked at the ring on the workbench. Platinum. Simple. Probably worth 3 months of rent. Then I picked it up and tucked it into the ledger's back pocket, where it would be safe until I figured out what to do next. I spent the rest of Friday cleaning. Not productive work, just cleaning. I mopped up the spilled paint thinner, threw out the ruined flannel shirt, reorganized tools that didn't need reorganizing. Muscle memory work that let my brain process everything that had just exploded across my life. Around 4 o'clock, I heard a car door outside. My first instinct was panic, my family coming back, more confrontation. But when I looked out the window, I saw Julian leaning against his Audi. He'd stayed, or come back. Either way, he was waiting. I walked out into the afternoon light. The fog had burned off, leaving one of those crystalline autumn days that made everything look sharp-edged and possible. "I wanted to make sure they actually left," Julian said when I approached. "I've been parked at the coffee shop down the road. Saw them drive away about an hour ago." I nodded, not quite trusting my voice. "I also wanted to apologize," he continued. "I had no idea about any of that. If I had known what your family—" He stopped, shook his head. "That's not quite true. I should have known. There were signs, but I chose not to see them." "That's normal," I said quietly. "It's easier not to see." Julian looked at the workshop, at the weathered sign above the door that read, "Dawson Woodworks." The table in there, the white oak one. That's genuinely extraordinary work. Professor Evans would lose his mind if he saw it. "Thanks. I meant what I said about the ring. Keep it as collateral, or sell it, whatever you need, and I'll have my lawyer reach out about the Instagram situation. Bella needs to issue a public correction at minimum, and you're entitled to pursue damages if you want." I thought about that, about lawsuits and lawyers and dragging this into court. It felt exhausting. I just want her to leave me alone. "That's fair." Julian pulled a business card from his wallet. "This is me. If you ever want to talk, or if you need a reference, or if you ever want to show your portfolio to Professor Evans, he's still teaching. He'd remember your work." I took the card. Heavy stock, minimalist design. Julian Chen, architectural consultant. "I don't have a portfolio anymore," I said. "I sold most of my early pieces to pay bills." "Then build a new one." Julian smiled, and it was the first genuine expression I'd seen from him all day. "You're 31. RISD's furniture program accepts graduate students. You could apply again." The idea felt too large to hold. I folded it away somewhere safe, somewhere I could examine it later when I wasn't running on adrenaline and paint thinner fumes. "Thank you," I said, "for everything today. You didn't have to." "Yeah, I did." He opened his car door, then paused. "For what it's worth, you're better off without them. All of them. Including me, probably." "You weren't so bad," I said, and meant it. He drove away, and I stood in the parking lot until the sound of his engine faded. Then I went back inside, back to the finishing studio, back to the white oak table that had somehow become the turning point of my entire life. I ran my hand across its surface, feeling the smoothness of 20 coats of oil, feeling the perfection of joints that would last 100 years. This table was proof. Proof that I was good enough, skilled enough, dedicated enough. Proof that I'd always been enough. I opened the ledger one more time, looked at the platinum ring, nestled in its back pocket. Then I closed it and put it in my desk drawer, where it would stay until I needed it. Tomorrow I would call the realtor about my parents' house. Tomorrow I would contact the IRS. Tomorrow I would start the long, complicated process of untangling myself from 8 years of lies. But today, right now, I was going to build something. I pulled on a fresh shirt, tied my hair back, and walked into the milling bay. There was a stack of cedar in the corner, beautiful clear grain boards I'd been saving for a special project. I pulled out 6 of them and carried them back to the finishing studio. An archway. Bella had asked for an archway. I wasn't going to make it not for Bella, not for the engagement party that would probably be cancelled now anyway, but I was going to make one for myself. Something beautiful and strong and precisely constructed. Something that marked a threshold between the life I'd been trapped in and the life I was going to build. I measured twice, marked my cuts, and fired up the table saw. The blade sang through cedar like a promise. 1 year later. The house sold in 45 days. I never went inside again, just signed the papers and watched my parents pack up in stony silence. They moved to a smaller place across town, and I heard through distant relatives that my father had gotten a job at a hardware store. My mother didn't speak to me anymore. Bella's engagement had ended, unsurprisingly, and she'd moved to Portland. I didn't miss any of them. I'd used the money from the ring, $12,000 at the jeweler's, to buy 6 months of financial breathing room. Then I'd taken Julian's advice and emailed Professor Evans at RISD. He'd remembered my name immediately, had asked to see my current work. I'd sent photos of the white oak table. He'd called me 20 minutes later. Now I pulled my truck into the workshop parking lot and saw Julian's Audi already there. We'd stayed in touch over the past year, tentative at first, then more regularly. He'd become a friend, then a collaborator. He had architectural clients who needed custom furniture. I had the skills to make it. It was a good partnership. Clean, equitable. Built on mutual respect rather than family obligation. Julian was waiting by the bay door, holding 2 cups of coffee. Morning. I brought the plans for the Beacon Hill project. Let me see. I took the coffee and the rolled blueprints, spreading them on my workbench. A built-in bookshelf system, 8 feet tall, white oak and walnut. Complex joinery. Exactly my kind of challenge. Timelines flexible, Julian said. Client wants quality over speed. That's my favorite kind of client. We spent an hour going over specifications, discussing wood selection, debating finish options. It was the kind of conversation I used to dream about having, technical, creative, between equals. When Julian left, I stood in the finishing studio for a moment, just breathing. The space smelled like sawdust and linseed oil. The white oak table still sat in the center of the room, no longer for sale. It was a marker now, a reminder. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I did recognize immediately. Professor Evans. Hi Verity, how are you? I'm teaching a weekend intensive on advanced joinery techniques next month at RISD. Would you consider being a guest instructor? We could discuss graduate program options while you're here. I read it twice. Then I typed back, I'd be honored. Before leaving for the day, I drove past the old house, my parents' former house. New owners had already painted it a different color, planted new shrubs, put up a basketball hoop in the driveway. It looked like a house where people were happy. I felt nothing looking at it. No grief, no anger, no nostalgia. Just the mild interest of someone observing a place they used to know. I turned the truck around and drove back toward the workshop, toward the life I was building, board by board, joint by joint, piece by piece. I had a bookshelf to design, a class to prepare for, a future to construct, and for the first time in 8 years, I had something I'd thought was lost forever. I had my time back, my skills, my name. I had myself.